Kia ora koutou katoa to the NBR whānau, and welcome to another edition of Te Ohanga Māori column, focusing on economic issues involving Māori as well as Pakihi Māori or Māori businesses. This week I'm joined by columnist Holly Bennett, who has written about the use of ingoa Māori or Māori names for public organisations. Kia ora, Holly.
Kia ora.
One particular name, Eke Panuku, has been on a lot of people's lips, including Wayne Brown recently, the new mayor of Auckland. Some people were even, Wayne said that he wanted to get rid of the whole board. Some people were equating its underperformance with the fact that it has a Māori name or a part Māori name. Who's been saying this, and what have you got to say in return?
So I've seen a lot of commentary around Eke Panuku. For many people, they don't even know that it exists. I think it's important to note that the full name of the organisation is Eke Panuku Auckland Development. So that's its actual full name. And one of the things that has concerned me with some of the rhetoric is about whether or not it's ingoa Māori, so its Māori name, is somehow responsible for a council-controlled organisation's lack of performance. And I wanted to explore that as a concept and actually refute it.
Well, it's kind of an example of the argument that's been around for years that there's sort of this Māorification. We were debating how to say this, whether to use the macron, but we'll say Māorification. This argument sort of exists out there and it sort of gets dredged up a lot. Is this another example of it?
Well, it's whether or not you believe Māorification as a term, or Māorification is what I hear it called, because, there's a certain type of person that wants to believe this is a thing that's happening. It's whether or not you believe it is a thing, and I would fundamentally say it's not a thing. I think it's a denigrating term. It's something that speaks to someone's lack of willingness to understand what the role of mana whenua and tangata whenua is in Aotearoa and the role of Te Tiriti. And often when I see it used, it's definitely used in a divisive way to create a sense of fear or spike sort of political interest in something, getting far, far away from the issue at heart, which here, around Eke Panuku, Auckland Development, is whether or not it's performing or not.
Sure. But the use of ingoa Māori names for organisations is kind of supposed to restore mana, right?
Aye.
And so if we have some of these organisations that perhaps aren't doing so well in the public eye, is that sort of counterproductive?
Yeah, see, there's something I pose for tangata whenua to think about in the column, because it is supposed to be something that restores mana to Māori and give us a place and a voice in spaces that we haven't necessarily been heard. And the thing that I'm wondering when we think about organisations and the discussion around Eke Panuku, but also when we think about Oranga Tamariki, a Waka Kotahi, these are organisations that are run by government, and arguably they're doing a shit job. So whether or not we think that's a good thing to have ingoa Māori attached to these organisations, because it feeds into this idea that somehow we as Māori have responsibility for what the state does, and we don't. The state is responsible for the state.
But does it kind of feed into that to perhaps say that having a Māori name, like we should not have Māori names because people might equate it with bad performance? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and that's something that we have to be cognizant of too, and that's why I think it's important for tangata whenua and mana whenua to think about this. And there's not one right or wrong answer. I think it's just something to give a voice to, that we need to think about it, because otherwise if we don't have a conversation, we're going to start being told this is what it means. And for us as Māori, it doesn't necessarily mean what those who believe in Māorification believes it is.
Kia ora. Well, hopefully Wayne Brown starts thinking a little bit more about Eke Panuku and the future there. So thanks very much for your time.
Kia ora.